Hi everyone, this is Dr. Amy Hogan, and this week's screencast is all about techniques of persuasion. We are bombarded every day with hundreds of ads trying to persuade us to do some kind of thing. Companies spend millions trying to persuade us to buy their products and their services. Let's look at one of the ads we've seen in the media recently. You're probably all very familiar with this ad. It's the whole I'm a PC, I'm a Mac. So what's this advert trying to get us to do? Well, it's trying to sell us computers, but there's no computer in sight. Instead, they are using two humans in place of the computers, and they're trying to persuade you to buy a Macintosh. And the advert is very effective in implicitly sending messages to the audience. So have a think for a moment. What messages are being sent with this Mac guy who's young and pretty hip and cool and was well known for being funny, for being a comedian, versus this guy who's a PC and he's slightly older, he's wearing an old business suit, professional perhaps, a little bit geeky with the glasses and the haircut. So what's the company trying to tell us? Well, they're trying to say, buy a Mac because those people who are young, cool, hip, want to use or should buy a Mac because it's the fun thing to do, it's the hip thing to do. Whereas people who are PC users perhaps are a little outdated, slightly older, maybe nerdy or geeky, or perhaps want to use the PC solely for work purposes rather than fun. So in one little neat package, the company is using very, very effective messages to send the audience, the message, buy my Mac because we're a young, hip, cool place for computers. So persuasion is the process of consciously attempting to change attitudes through the transmission of a message. So we'll see throughout this screencast that there are many different techniques that people use to try and persuade you of their particular message. Let's have a look through some more adverts. Take a moment to have a look at this ad, and if needs be, press pause on your video while you try to figure out what is the intended message of the advert. So here we have this beautiful safari scene, and we have a giraffe that is made up of pennies and coins. And if you can see what the tagline says, it's not very clear. It says, save the world with a few coins. Donate at wwf.at. So this ad is by the WWF, and they're obviously trying to get you to donate money to help save species of animals. But what's interesting, it says save the world with a few coins, but visually they have made up the whole animal of coins. So literally the impact is by just donating a few pennies here and there, we can literally build up this large animal, a giraffe that is tall. They didn't pick a hippopotamus or something short and stout. They purposely picked a giraffe to say how these small little coins build up into something bigger and taller. So the message is clear, just a small few donations will help us raise some money for these beautiful animals in this lovely safari scene. Let's have a look at another ad. Again, take a few minutes, pause the video and take a look and see what the intended message of this advert is. So, as you can see, this is an advert by a condom company, and they want you to buy their condoms so you are protected during sex. So they have their little tagline over in the bottom right hand corner that says, don't be stupid, protect yourself. But rather than going the literal route of perhaps having a man and a woman in bed, just about to do the deed, as it were, they have this war scene. So what's going on with this advert? It's using humour to try and appeal to people to use condoms. And they're making an analogy of going to bed unprotected, as going into war unprotected. So you have this soldier here who is not wearing much, if anything, apart from a grimace and a rather large gun. So he's naked. So the implicit message is, of course, he's unprotected. You wouldn't go into war unprotected, so don't go into sex unprotected. But there are some kind of interesting phallic references. Notice the bald head, again, perhaps meant to simulate the helmet of the soldiers. And also notice the placement of the gun. Obviously, we are protecting seeing anything we don't want to see in that area, but the shadow is certainly suggestive of something. I'll leave it to you to figure that one out. But again, it is using humour and some implicit messages to try and sell their product. So there are many theories that have investigated which factors make messages more persuasive. So let's look at one of these models. It's called the elaboration likelihood model. This model talks about the probability that the target of a persuasive message, so the audience, will elaborate the information contained in the message. By elaboration, we mean how much cognitive effort will they take to actually analysing the content of the message. So you have two routes to persuasion. The central route to persuasion is a level of high elaboration. So the person viewing the ad is taking a lot of cognitive effort, some time and effort, to actually analyse the message. So the individual is carefully considering the communication. And they would be influenced by things such as the strength and the quality of the argument. So that's the first route to persuasion. The second route to persuasion is called the peripheral route. And this is a level of low elaboration, as in the audience person is not taking the time, they're either unwilling or unable to analyse the content of the message. So those people who are taking this peripheral route might be influenced by irrelevant cues to the content or the quality. So for example, they might be more swayed by the attractiveness of the person in the ad rather than the actual content of the message. So let's see what factors are at play in terms of persuasion. The first is credibility. Credibility is the idea that we base our perceptions on expertise and trustworthiness. So sometimes if a message or an advert or a commercial has credibility, we believe that there is an expert contained in that message. They know what they're talking about. So they might have extensive knowledge of the domain, and we might believe that they're not lying. They haven't got any hidden motives. They're just telling us the truth. So for example, a lot of adverts to do with bio or medical or makeup type products might contain a person in a white coat. Now we probably know that this is just a nice blonde-haired, blue-eyed actress, that perhaps she's not really a dentist, but the presence of that white coat gives her credibility. We think, hey, she must know what she's talking about. Maybe she is a dentist. Maybe she uses Colgate and is endorsing that. It doesn't hurt that she's also attractive and she has these lovely pearly white teeth. So we think, hey, she must know what she's talking about. Therefore, I believe in Colgate. If you can imagine putting someone up there that didn't have very good teeth and perhaps not in that doctor's white coat, then maybe that advert wouldn't be as effective. A related issue to credibility is called the sleeper effect. This is the idea that highly credible sources are at their most persuasive immediately after the message has been presented, and they're more persuasive than less credible sources. That makes sense. The more credible, immediately after, someone will rate it as more persuasive than a less credible source. But what's interesting, though, and this is what the sleeper effect is that over time, that credibility gap weakens. So the low credibility source are forgotten, and they become almost just as persuasive as the high credibility source. You can see over here that there's a nice little graph here that after the immediate test, the highly credible source is ranked as more persuasive, but over time it tends to lose its credibility. And similarly at the bottom here, immediately in the low credibility situation, immediately following the test, it's not as persuasive. But over time we forget where the source came from, and so the persuasive nature or the rating of how persuasive it is actually increases. And that's the nature of the sleeper effect. Later on, if the individual is reminded of the source of credibility and we reassess their attitudes, then that highly credible source becomes more persuasive again, so it eliminates the sleeper effect. Another factor in how persuasive messages can be is attractiveness. Basically, we are more persuaded by people that we like, those that are similar to us, or at least we perceive them to be similar to us, and those people who are physically attractive. It's no coincidence that a lot of beauty and makeup ads use beautiful actresses as their spokesperson. For example, this lovely advert here of Halle Berry, and she's advertising her perfume. We want to buy products, we want to be persuaded by products sold by people who are attractive. Perhaps you don't see so many adverts of people who are not really on the attractive side. We want to be persuaded by people that we like. We can perceive communicators as being similar to us in many ways. We can think that their attitudes are similar to us, or their values, their general background, or appearance. Take a look at this student loan ad. Again, we have this young girl. She's pretty attractive. She almost has that kind of girl next door quality. She's at a college campus, so she has some sort of credibility as well. So on the whole, you might think this is a fairly effective message or effective advert to try and get someone to take out a student loan. But what about mature students who are returning to their academic career? Perhaps an advert like the second one would be more effective. Why? Because the people that they have portrayed in the ad are slightly more mature, they are professional looking, and so on. And so it really depends on the audience as to how effective the intended message could be, what actors and actresses you use in your ad. If you're appealing to a younger crowd, then you use the advert on the left. If you're appealing to perhaps a more professional, mature crowd, then you would use the advert on the right. Another factor that can be used in persuasion is the use of emotions. On the whole, people who are in a good or a positive mood are more susceptible to persuasion. If you think about it, there is a reason why stores like to play music when you're shopping. They're trying to put you in a good mood so you spend more money. On the whole, research shows that happy people are less likely to engage in that higher level of elaboration, so they're not really thinking about the content of the message, therefore they're more persuadable. They want you to put you in a good mood so you buy more stuff. Well, why? Research has given us at least a couple of explanations as to why people who are happy are more persuadable. There's the feelings as information explanation. This basically says that people who are in a positive or a happy or a good mood get the signal from their body that everything's fine in the environment, so I haven't got to worry about being anxious or thinking about things, so I'm just going to take everything at face value. So they haven't got to engage in that effortful, high elaboration of adverts. Another explanation is called the hedonic contingency view. This is the basic idea that people who are happy, those people who are in a good mood, want to remain happy, and so they kind of keep doing cognitive tasks that keep them in that state. So if they think that something pleasant will come from a higher level of elaboration, then they will do that. But at the same time, if they don't need to expend that effort, if they think that they can stick in that happy frame of mood and engage in that low level of elaboration, then they'll do that too. Another use of emotion is fear. Some adverts use fear to persuade people of a particular message. We are perhaps all familiar with the anti-smoking campaign that we've seen on the TV and so on in print ads. There are a lot of people that have had some horrible things happen to them as a result of smoking for a prolonged period. For example, we've seen this advert on the TV of a lady from North Carolina that has lost her voice, and the message is very powerful, saying that you should record your voice while you still can. She lost her voice due to smoking. But is the use of fear in adverts effective? What do you think? Research has shown that if we have too much or too high a level of fear, then it's counterproductive. It increases anxiety in the audience. That means that they turn off, they switch off. They don't want to listen to the ad. They don't want to see the ad. Therefore, they don't critically analyze the information or the recommended actions that will help us to avoid danger. So too much fear is a bad thing. Fear works the best when information is provided to overcome that danger. So for example, with the anti-smoking ads, it's not just necessary to cause fear in your viewer, but you have to be able to provide them information to help them overcome that danger. So for example, including an information to a smoking helpline. So in summary, fear works best when combined with information to overcome that danger. What about humour? Humour is used a lot in adverts and in fact can be used effectively to increase attention to the message. For example, this advert by SlimFast. Take a moment to have a look over the ad and see what the intended message is. So obviously this is an ad by a company that are trying to get you to buy their product to help you lose weight. And it's tapping into perhaps the anxiety of every woman, particularly on her wedding day where she wants to look her best. And so she's saying, most brides want to lose a little weight before they get married. And this poor old female cake topper is so hefty that she has actually fallen through her own cake. So it's a little bit of humour to try and get women to buy their product in order to try and get them to lose weight for their wedding. I'll leave it up to you as to whether you think this is funny or offensive. On the whole, research shows that people are more likely to listen to someone who is trying to make them laugh. So humour can be a good thing. But, like with everything, too much humour can be bad. If you have too much humour at the expense of the content, then the humour might get in the way. It might interfere with what the main message of the advert is all about. So it might direct the attention away from the persuasive content. However, if the humour is relevant, it can increase that central route to processing that higher level of elaboration. Humour particularly can be helpful with fear-inducing messages. So if you have a little bit of fear but also a little bit of humour, it helps the audience to more effectively process that message. We saw that a little bit earlier with that condom advert. Okay, lastly, the last factor that can have an impact on persuasion is this idea of having a two-sided message. What that basically means is that where you're providing both sides of an argument, so you not only are you trying to persuade the person of your side of the argument, but you also present the other side and then counter-argue or refute them. You might think that is opposite to what advertisers are trying to do. Why would you introduce a competing product if you're trying to get you to buy mine? But there are some advantages to doing this. In mentioning the opposing message, it suggests that you are fair-minded. So in doing so, that increases your trustworthiness and your credibility, and then that in turn increases your effectiveness at persuasion. We see this technique quite a lot with adverts for like laundry, detergent, or washing up soap and so on. They'll often give you a comparison of how two products work, and in the end they try to persuade you to buy their product. But they're trying to say, hey, look, here's the competition, this is how we both fare, aren't we credible, aren't we great, but buy our product instead. So that is just a quick look at some of the factors that are involved in persuasion. Now that you have a better understanding of some of those techniques that are used by companies to persuade you to buy their products and services, the question is, do you think you are going to be less likely or more likely to be persuaded the next time you see these types of adverts?